Hi, everybody. Welcome back to SaaS Founder Stories. Today, I have a real pleasure to have Mohit. He's the CEO and founder of Oloid, and he's going to be chatting with us about something that we haven't talked about before in the show. He's going to be talking about how he transitioned from having like that family feeling in the organization to shortly after product market fit becoming a real company and actually moving his team and people through that process. So Mohit's a second time founder, so we're going to learn a lot from him today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, David.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about Oloid.
Yeah. Oloid is a cybersecurity company. We solve for passwordless authentication for frontline workers, also known as deskless workers. So think of us when Okta, Microsoft, Bing, they don't work for a retail store worker or a healthcare professional because they can't use mobile device and authenticator apps. We come to the rescue and we provide frictionless and secure passwordless authentication for frontline environment.
Very cool. And so how did you get into that?
Yeah, so for us, the thesis around the company, the foundational belief has never changed, but we have gone through few iterations. We always started with the belief that our physical environment, our digital environment has to respond to our identity very frictionlessly. And we started thinking about the day of the life of an employee. And while there's so much focus around login and passwordless, we actually looked at the whole cycle of when you encounter the door at your building and you encounter a time clock. So we started with initial products physically about addressing physical access challenges with providing Bluetooth based authentication. COVID hit and we realized nobody's coming to offices. So we pivoted to serving factories. So our first customer, large customers, was a manufacturing customer. And then we started truly appreciating the challenge of frontline workers and deskless workers. We started realizing that sitting in Silicon Valley, where I'm based, we're typically serving the needs of tech companies and financial services companies, knowledge worker intensive companies. But the industrial sector had a big gap. Now, the big players, they were designing solutions for a user persona, which we define as a knowledge worker, and the frontline worker, deskless worker, was being left behind. They couldn't use a company provided device, put an authenticator app on it, OTP, union challenges, you pay for the OTP, the union wants the company to pay for the phone, pay for the connection. So we saw a number of problems for the company, for the users in delivering a frictionless, secure way of authenticating at the workplace, all throughout the life of the employee at their workday. So now we're committed to creating that frictionless experience throughout the workday with passwordless authentication.
Very cool. Well, let's jump into the transition because I think this is a really interesting. First of all, congratulations having done it twice because not many founders get there one time. So that's pretty awesome. But tell me, set up like this topic. So you've hit product market fit. Up until that point, you have, real family based, you know everybody intimately, and then you start to grow. So how do you manage it?
Yeah, so my experience is almost like when you are in the pre-product market fit stage, the team who's with you is because they chose to be with you. They have signed up for a journey which is full of uncertainty, and they did that willingly, right? They weren't the type of team member who was looking for the next pre-IPO where they're going to make a killing in 2 years, right? That's probably the most optimal way to make money. Making money as a founder is much harder than joining a company 2 years before pre-IPO and taking three bets and one of them succeeds. You're probably going to do well, do all right. That's an understatement, right? But folks who choose to join a company in its very early stage, they had something personal about making that decision. They either believed in you, believed in the idea, believed in both, hopefully, and they are in it to solve with you together. Now, in return, most founders are deeply appreciative of that opportunity to work with this team member. They return it back with a deep sense of personal relationship, loyalty, keeping them up to date, engaging them, even if it's not their direct responsibility, having chats and sharing the vulnerability, right? So what happens is, whether it's 2 years, 3 years before you truly start hitting that hockey stick and building go to market, the entire team feels deeply connected to the mission and the founders. And post product market fit, now you're going to bring folks who have done the same thing other companies and bring them with a very specific objective, right? We call them operators. And the operators are going to come and throw benchmarks at you on salary, equity, and they're going to negotiate hard. And you're going to make a case with your board and saying, this person can be an accelerator. So we're going to bring them in and give them very specific objectives and give them market comp, right? Sometimes they'll also get titles which are above some of your initial team members, founding team members. Now this starts creating this sense of insecurity with your original team members that I'm no longer valued. And if the founders are not doing a good job with communicating the reasons, right, making them part of the making them continue to feel like the founding team and saying we are making this decision together. We as a team are most deeply invested in the success of this company, and this person who's joining our team is the next step of maturity for the company. If you not carried them along, they will feel left behind. And I'll flip it on the other side. Some founding team members do not scale with the company. So while you could put the owners and founders to help them, coach them, scale them, not everybody will scale. You'll start seeing gaps where the need of the company is the ask is much higher than what they can fulfill. And many times these are painful departures where you give them the opportunity, and at some point, you got to have an honest conversation, and maybe they need to find success elsewhere where the company's needs are consistent with what they can deliver at that moment in time. So I would say in both situations where either the company moved too fast and the person got left behind or the person didn't scale up, both are fairly painful situations. And I think as a founder, like I said, it's all about building along with your team and carrying your team along. And these transitions have to be done very consciously, very deliberately. It is a people business, although we believe it's a technology business or a go-to-market is going to drive the outcomes. I think enjoying and having fun along the way is having those people who are with you right on the beginning of the story to be with you when you take it to the next level and hopefully to a exit or some outcome which everybody feels great about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's like one of the big challenges with people is I find startup people, I'll say like early startup people, they've got a really unique set of skills, right? Usually they're generalists. They can do
Very good point.
a multitude of things. There's very little you can't throw at them, and they'll get it 80% there, at least enough to get you to the next level. And then you transition into that next stage where you're bringing in these specialized people that have done this one thing over and over and over again. And so they know how to come in and implement a system. So when you bring them in, obviously you're stepping on people's toes. How often do you find that you can actually scale that startup person into that next level? Is it like 50%? What did you find so far?
Yeah. And I've spent enough cycles thinking about this. I've encountered this several times. And I have a mental framework around at every transition point in your career, you are making a decision based on three parameters: needs to learn, earn, or express yourself, hopefully, all three. And I would say if there are team members who had just one of those as being a dominant need and they're not able to transition out of that need. So if let's say somebody was a young graduate, very motivated, very hungry to learn, right? But now as the company scales, they're not valuing efficiency that comes with repeated processes, right? They always want to do the next new thing, not optimize, not build for scale, right? Then they're not valuing the opportunity on the other dimensions, right? So, like I said, it is also the responsibility of the team leaders and founders to do that coaching. Like, one thing I always try to do is before I raise the next round of funding, 1 year before, we're all talking in all hands. We're talking every time we get together about changes coming, right? In the
Hmm.
next round, we're going to have most likely a financial mindset, a company come into a Series B, Series C. They're a growth investor. So far, what we have seen are seed investors, A investors, right? They're a lot about the vision. So, lo and behold, the focus on analytics, data, metrics is coming, right? So start bracing for that. Like, let's start putting that discipline today, right? So I think the more we share that context of the why, as opposed to going and saying, I need this metrics report, and the person's thinking, hey, I got to do my code. Why do you want these metrics? I would rather be building than doing process. You didn't share the context with them. So I think again, it's about some people who will always want to be early stage and they'll go from one early stage to the next. Some want to actually grow. They want to expand their skill set and go beyond just that one dimension. And I think those are the ones which scale really well.
Love that concept of like preparing people. So often we're in that reactive mode where we're just trying to do that thing that you're doing right now, and people don't get the big picture. And so, yeah, you do like one all hands and you tell them, but how often, how many times you need to tell people what's really happening and iterate and tell the story and continue telling the story. And I think people are really good at adapting and changing if they know what's coming. Where I don't think they're very good at it is if you don't tell them, like you know you're going into this next round and what's going to come and the metrics and the people you're going to have to hire because
That's right.
you've got it already built out in your projections and you know where you're going with it. But if you don't tell so and so who's running the marketing team that when we raise this funding, it looks like we're going to bring in this person, and they're going to be above you, and you just do it, you're going to blow them up 9 times out of 10.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting.
That's really important.
So what's the biggest thing you would pass on to founders who are, let's say, a seed round, they've got a company that's going, they've got their timeline and they know they're going into a series A in 18 to 24 months. What should they be doing and how would you set them up for success?
I think it's a combination of a couple of things, right? It's hard to say just one. I think one, you got to very quickly figure out where you're going to hang your hat for your Series A. Like generally at seed stage, companies are still considering some optionality between multiple options. And I think the sooner the founding team, the core team, founding team can focus the energy. So I'm a big believer that right after every round of financing, you let off some of the pressure that's building up, right? That's a perfect time to step back. Step back and take 2 months, talk to your board and say, hey, 2 months, we're going to step back and regroup. And you can have an explicit discussion with your investors, right? This is the time when you are enjoying this new relationship, new excitement in the team, investor. He's really excited about the future. This is the time where I would highly recommend stepping back and saying, okay, for our Series A, what are the top two, three things we need to achieve? Okay, we have optionality, but what can we do in the next 2 months to gather more data, to hang our hat on one thing, and then use the remainder of 16 months to execute on that one thing? Carrying optionality along too far down the lane is going to spread your resources, then the team is not going to be as focused. So, one is if you haven't already figured out exactly what your metrics for a A are there more customers? Is it user adoption? Is it cracking go to market? Sometimes it's a combination. Create a priority order and try to kill some of the optionality, which is either obvious or can be eliminated with 2 months of data analysis, research, and talking to customers. And the second I would say is prepare for what your team is going to look like and start, like I said, coaching and mentoring, either upskilling your team for that growth or looking at by what timeline you need to bring in the external operators who know and do it really well. So build the team for that Series A readiness, for that scale. And sometimes it's about having that team in mind and going to raise with these names of people saying, we would bring in somebody like this in the team the moment we raise, right? So have some of that
Mhm.
legwork done. What you don't want is
Yeah.
you close the round and now your team is not ready to deploy that capital, right? Then you're taking 6 months to get the team in place. So start thinking about it. If you can't pull the trigger, at least have in mind what your post Series A team looks like.
I love it. Well, thank you very much, man. I learned quite a bit, and I love the way that you put strategy into play so early and communication. So thank you very much for coming on the show, and I can't wait to chat with you again.
That's great. I enjoyed speaking with you, David. Thank you for having me on the show.